In this issue, we will discuss the work The Castle by German Jewish writer Franz Kafka. This unfinished masterpiece, discovered after Kafka's death, describes the events in a country town where the main character, a man named K, whose name is reminiscent of the author's initials, is involved in a huge government organization called The Castle. It is a strange work that can be read in many different ways, with a semi-autobiographical background that is also apparent. The author, a descendant of Jews who lost their homeland, was born and raised in Prague, then under German occupation, and as a Christian, this could be interpreted as an implication of the rut he was forced to live in to conceal his Jewish blood and religion. So, among other things, this book is recommended for readers who want to explore the meaning of human rights vis-a-vis bureaucracy and other social barriers. There are four main characters. K, a surveyor who has come all the way from another country at the request of a castle in a country town. Frida, who works at a local tavern and is the mistress of Klamm, the castle governor. Klamm, the castle official, is elusive and continues to balk at K's request for permanent residency. Then there is Barnabas, a messenger from the castle who delivers a message to K. K, who has been assigned to a strange land alone as a surveyor. But his loneliness is compounded by a sense of hopelessness and helplessness as he interacts with the inhabitants of the absurd village society, who live under the silent rule of power from the castle, and with whom he is never at peace. K receives an unexpected appointment from the Count as a surveyor and arrives late at night in the snow from his hometown in the village of his estate. Looking for a place to stay, K enters an inn called Bridge Inn, but the owner urges him to sleep in the bar because there are no rooms available. While the surrounding peasants quieted down, K, exhausted, took blankets out of the attic and lay down by the stove. However, K is awakened by Schwarzer, the son of the castle's butler, who arrives a short time later and accuses him, "You don't have a lodging permit." When K claims that he was called by the Count as a surveyor, Schwarzer calls the castle to check with the junior steward. As K lay there listening, he heard that the castle had appointed K as a surveyor. K turned away Schwarzer as he approached, borrowed a towel from landlady, and slept soundly until morning. The next morning, K continues walking through the snowy village toward the castle on top of the mountain, but is unable to find a way to get closer to the castle. When tired K visited the small house, he found, in addition to the old man who had invited him in, a leather worker named Laisman, a man with a cheek beard, a child playing, and a woman with a baby in her arms. When K identifies himself as the Count's surveyor, the family does not seem to welcome him and tells him, "We are not in the habit of entertaining guests." The woman lying in the easy chair in the corner seems to be someone associated with the castle, and as soon as K speaks to her, the men forcefully pull him away and remove him from the house. When K returned to the inn, Artur and Jeremias, who claimed to be K's assistants, were waiting for him. K is frustrated with his unwieldy assistants and declares that from now on he will call them by the same name, Arthur. They call the castle to ask for permission for the three to enter, but the castle stubbornly refuses, saying that they are banned indefinitely. Then a man named Barnabas, claiming to be a messenger from the castle, appears and hands K a letter. The letter states that the mayor has informed K of details concerning his work and labor, and that K is obligated to report to the mayor. Barnabas, who is in charge of liaison with the executive of the castle, also overhears that he will be going to the castle regularly to inform K of his demands. K asked Barnabas to convey his thanks to the executive of the castle and promised to follow his instructions. Barnabas recited K's exact words and K was pleased with his fidelity. So K accompanies Barnabas on his way out and tries to head straight for the castle. However, not knowing where they are going in the dark snowy night, they are eventually invited into his house by Barnabas, who has just returned home. Barnabas introduces K to his parents and his two sisters, Olga and Amalia, and encourages her to stay the night, but K, who has no interest in this family, wants to return to the inn as soon as possible, so he accompanies Olga, who says she is going to the inn to buy beer to serve to her guests. However, the destination was not the Bridge Inn, but the Herrenhof Inn, where only castle officials were allowed to stay. When Kay learns that a castle official named Klamm is staying here, he meets Frida, a waitress at a tavern who says she is his girlfriend, and while Olga is fussing with Klamm's followers, Kay and Frida develop a relationship. She says that she has asked Klamm many times not to bring the noisy squires, but they are still making noise in Frida's tavern and Klamm is asleep without a care in the world. Kay peeks inside through a hole in the door of the next room to see Klamm at her work desk. With an echo of disappointment in Frida's voice as she tells him that she used to be a maid in the livestock department, Kay asks her to leave Klamm and become my lover. Frida drives the followers away with her whip to the corral, then rolls across the floor hugging Kay under the counter table and hits the door to Klamm's room. When she hears Crumb's blunt voice calling Frida from inside the room, Frida clenches her fists, slams the door, and retorts loudly, "I'm with the surveyor." Feeling the greatest happiness, Kay took Frida in his arms for the rest of the night on the beer-stained floor. Eventually, Kay said, "What a mess we've made. This is the end of us." Frida replied, "No, it's not. I'm done with you. But I've made you mine. Look, those two are smiling." Kay turns around to see two sleep-deprived assistants sitting on the counter, and when Kay yells at them to leave, they don't move. And when Olga, her hair and clothes in disarray, returned to the tavern with her retinue of peasants and tearfully complained to Kay, "Why didn't you come home with me?" Frida took her change of clothes and led Kay out of the tavern. Back at the Bridge Inn, Frida clings to Kay and they fall into bed together. The landlady appears in the attic, but Kay is too tired to stay in bed all day. When Kay wakes up the next morning, the landlady, who is waiting by her bed while she knits, accuses Frida of being unhappy because she is leaving Klamm, a man of high rank, to marry Kay, a stranger. Frida is confused, sobbing, and hugs Kay. "Klamm isn't interested in me anymore. I even suspect that Klamm may have arranged the meeting with Kay." Feeling that the landlady was trying to tear them apart, Kay was prepared to endure the hardships of this foreign country, so he called his assistants with Klamm's letter and the three of them went to the mayor. The mayor, who greeted Kay in his bed because he was sick, reviewed a letter from Klamm addressed to Kay and suggested, "The village does not need a surveyor." Perhaps the mismanagement of notices received in the past may be related to the discrepancy in notifying Kay of his employment this time. When he informed Mrs. Mizzy that there might still be a letter of instruction with the word "surveyor" with a blue line drawn on it, Kay's assistants helped her with a candle and began scattering a large number of papers in a cupboard around the room in search of the letter of instruction. "I don't understand why so many useless assistants were assigned to me. All I want is to work as a surveyor." When Kay complains, the mayor denies his claim and replies, "Nothing unreasonable has happened in this village. It's just that an official named Sordini, who has a strong work ethic, was seduced by a man named Brunswick, who is the brother-in-law of Laisman, a leather worker who was powerful in the village at the time, and decided, with this matter of inviting a surveyor, it's not yet completely clear that a surveyor is unnecessary. Taking into consideration the fact that you are engaged to Frida, who is from this region, I will tell the castle to decide on your treatment once again." Kay, who was unlikely to be guaranteed his rights even by the mayor, had no choice but to return to the inn with his assistants. Back at the Bridge Inn, when Kay went upstairs to the attic where Frida was waiting, he found the teacher waiting for him, who had come to relay a request from the mayor. The teacher, after accusing Kay of being disrespectful during his earlier visit to the mayor, informed him that the mayor had taken the generous step of offering Kay the position of janitor at the elementary school. When Kay unsatisfactorily rejects the teacher's offer, Frida hurriedly persuades Kay to reconsider, and Kay reluctantly accepts his offer to be hired as a janitor. The teacher left, saying, "I give you the right to live in the classroom without classes, but you must eat your meals in this inn." While Frida and Kay's assistants were getting ready to move into the school, Kay went outside to look at the castle, and before long he was at the Herrenhof Inn. As Kay approaches the peephole of the room in the tavern where Klamm was, Peppy, who has replaced Frida, comes over and says, "The room where the castle's top brass dine is empty now, a sleigh is waiting for Klamm in the courtyard." When Kay quickly left the tavern and headed for the dimly lit courtyard, he found a coachman sitting in a waiting two-horse-drawn sleigh. With the cold weather biting, Kay leaned against the wall and waited, but no Klamm appeared anytime soon. With the cold weather setting in, Kay leaned against the wall and waited, but no matter how long he waited, Klamm did not come out. As Kay is sipping cognac in a comfortable sleigh, as recommended by the coachman, Momus, Klamm's secretary, arrives and asks Kay to accompany him. Kay refuses at first, wanting to wait for Klamm, but eventually returns to the tavern where Momus has already summoned the landlady from the Bridge Inn. However, the nervous Klamm takes advantage of the opportunity and rides off in a sleigh, and Kay misses him. Momus, the special in-village secretary serving Klamm and another dignitary, who is in charge of processing necessary documents and petitions in the village, requested Kay to answer questions in order to complete the paperwork. Landlady advises Kay how to approach Klamm through Momus, but Momus says that the statement is not a means to meet Klamm, but merely to keep accurate records of the village. Kay left the Herrenhof Inn unconvinced of the necessity of the interrogation and wondering if Klamm would even actually read the transcript. As Kay walks down the windswept night street, Kay's assistants with lights and Barnabas approach him and hand him a letter from Klamm. Kay is delighted and reads the letter so that it will not be blown away by the wind. Dear Surveyor of the Bridge House, we appreciate the surveying work you and your assistants have done so far. You are expected to resume your interrupted work in the future, and upon completion, you will be paid. Rest assured that I will be watching over you at all times. Kay thrust the letter under Barnabas' nose and yelled at him. Klamm has been misreported. I haven't done any surveying work yet, and you know how incompetent these assistants are. Now more than ever, I need a reliable messenger. Barnabas promises to reiterate Kay's request to Klamm, but Kay is frustrated that Barnabas is prioritizing the internal work he is taking on from Brunswick, the shoemaker, and also feels discouraged that he can only rely on Barnabas. I am going to visit your house tomorrow. Please give my regards to your sisters. But first, you must bring Klamm's reply to the school. I'll be waiting for you. Barnabas was delighted by this promise from Kay. He shook his hand and tapped Kay lightly on the shoulder. For some reason, the touch of that hand that Barnabas placed on his shoulder feels like a special honor to Kay. Kay finally made it back to school and groped his way into the classroom in the dark, remembering Klamm's letter and laboring over it for the first time to his assistants. When Kay sees Frida preparing Kay's bed with low oil and no lights, he feels responsible for his selfishness in taking her out and decides to be patient and not complain. Frida's kindness in boiling the coffee made him happy, and Kay leaned against the stove and watched her deftness. At midnight, too cold to sleep, Kay and Frida break down the door with an axe to keep warm, and have his assistants bring firewood from the storage shed. She is annoyed by the rudeness of the assistants, and she tries to talk to Frida about it, but in the end she has no choice but to accept living with them. Kay wakes up in the middle of the night to find one of his assistants sleeping beside him, and Kay gets angry and knocks him awake. Frida strokes the assistant's hair and comforts him. Kay ordered his assistants to stop stoking the firewood. When they all woke up the next morning, the students who had already arrived at school were standing around their bunks. The teacher appeared, grabbed the assistants by the collar and yelled at them, "Who is the culprit who broke into the storeroom?" Frida steps forward and defends herself, saying, "It was my fault for breaking down the shed door," but when the assistants point to Kay, Frida laughs aloud and confesses, they were just watching their master pry the door open. The teacher raises his whip and accuses, "You liars! You've been silently letting your own wrongdoing be passed on to others. He then tells Kay that he is fired. When Kay insisted that he would not move a step here until the mayor himself explained the reason for his dismissal, the teacher moved with the students to another classroom. Kay is saddened that Frida protected his assistants at the expense of Kay. He fires his assistants and removes them from the classroom. Frida laments, "I am nothing but a liability to Kay. I want to leave this place to get away from Klamm and your assistants." Kay hugged her and comforted her. "I couldn't count on the Barnabas family, and in the end, it was you who made my life in this village easier." Frida is delighted and asks Kay, her voice bubbling, "Are you sure you left the family? Are you sure?" Kay hesitated to answer, but he had not yet realized that the intentions of the assistants, who kept banging on the door, pleading and making noise outside the classroom window, were actually after Frida. Soon there is a quiet knock at the door and a lone student named Hans enters the classroom. This boy, who wants to help Kay, is the son of Brunswick, a shoemaker, and Hans' family had come to bathe when Kay had previously visited the Lazeman home of a leather worker, where they had met Kay. Hans' mother, who is involved with the castle, is ill, and when Kay hears that she is concerned about Kay's current situation, he offers to help her heal, but Hans tells him, "My mother does not want to see you face to face." Still wanting to help his mother suffer due to his father's political activities, such as demanding the invitation of a surveyor, Hans promises to create an opportunity for Kay to speak with his mother without his father's knowledge. Kay clung to that unrealistic hope and vowed once again to the teacher that he would devote himself to the janitor's position. But as Frida listened to Kay's conversation with Hans, she began to suspect, as landlady had warned, that Kay might not be a person worth trusting. Kay says, "I'm going to get lunch," like the teacher said, and leaves Frida at school to visit Barnabas' house. Barnabas was not present, but his sister Amalia said, "My brother will not go to school to deliver a message to you," and Olga returned after chopping wood in the garden and said, "Amalia, the youngest, makes the decisions for the family and takes care of our parents." The reason for their estrangement from the castle, and even the villagers' avoidance of the Barnabas family, is that 3 years ago, on the day of the festivities, the castle officials found the beautiful Amalia, but she was humiliated by a vulgar letter from him and refused to answer his call to the Herrenhof Inn. The official's name is Soltini, and he says he is not the same person as the reputed official Sordini. Eventually her father, a firefighter, was fired and the family was isolated and struggling, but her father worked hard to defend Amalia's honor, and Amalia nursed him back to health. Her brother Barnabas, who had taken on subcontract work for the shoemaker Brunswick for a meager wage to support his impoverished family, tried to establish a relationship with the castle by serving as Klamm's emissary when Kay was invited to the village as a surveyor. Olga hopes that her brother will be recognized by Kay as a competent emissary and that his contribution to the castle will lighten the family's sin a little, but Amalia despises his attitude of trying to take advantage of the castle. Olga suggested to Kay that he stay home tonight to wait for his brother because it was late, but when Kay learned that his assistant had come looking for him on Frida's errand, he declined Olga's offer and went outside. The only person waiting for Kay in front of Barnabas' house was his assistant, Jeremias, but he was somehow different from before, sickly and losing his youth. When Artur, the other assistant, could no longer stand the rough business he was receiving from Kay, he arranged for Frida, who was hurt by Kay's betrayal, to return to her former tavern and said he went back to the castle to complain about his work. Jeremias came looking for Kay to confirm for Frida that Kay had lied and gone to Barnabas' house. Then an out-of-breath Barnabas appears in front of Kay and gives him a message. "Erlanger, Klamm's first secretary, has something to tell you. He will be at the Herrenhof Inn until he returns to the castle early in the morning, so please visit him in room 15 where he is staying." Kay returns to the Herrenhof Inn, chasing after Jeremias, who suddenly runs off to meet Erlanger. At the entrance, there is a line of petitioners shivering in the cold. They, too, seem to be waiting for Erlanger to finish his meeting with Momus. When Kay reaches Erlanger's room, he is informed by the squire who checks inside, that Erlanger is sleeping. Looking around aimlessly, Kay finds Frida at a corner of the hallway, but her attitude is cold and she accuses Kay of having left school to go to Barnabas' house to meet Olga and her family. Kay excuses herself to clear up the misunderstanding, but Frida tells of her relationship with her childhood friend Jeremias and how he broke the classroom window and took her away. Silent, they walked shoulder to shoulder down the hallway, and when Kay suggested to her that they break up, Frida went into her room with Jeremias and eventually closed the door. Left alone in the quiet hallway, Kay drinks the rum from the dish tray that Frida left behind and turns back to Erlanger's room. However, he was lost, as all the rooms looked alike, so he knocked on the door on a guess, only to find that it was the room of an official named Berger, who was different from Erlanger. Berger invites Kay into his room at 4 o'clock in the early morning after he has disturbed his sleep and sits him on the edge of his bed to talk to him until sleep comes again. Kay listened to Berger's happy talk about his duties, but before long he was asleep. Nighttime interrogations with petitioners who visit us in the middle of the night are a public service to our secretaries, who have a sense of duty to take up petitions for deliberation, even if they are petitions outside their jurisdiction, which they have no authority to do, and it clouds their judgment as a public service. Moreover, secretaries only respond. It is the organization that makes the decision, and if a petition is not properly timed, we are often turned away, even if our next appointment is at the correct date and time. When Kay, who had dozed off, loses his balance and grabs Berger's sleeping leg, he is awakened by a few hard thumps on the walls of the room. Is there a surveyor in that room? Berger replies, yeah, he's here, and urges Kay, it's Erlanger. You should go to him right away. Suddenly woken from a deep sleep, Kay forced himself to get up and walk out into the hallway to Erlanger's room, the door of which was open. Erlanger, who was already getting ready to leave, asked Kay, why didn't you come earlier? He said, the story I want to tell you is, among other things, that there is now another girl working in the tavern at the inn, replacing Frida, and in order for Klamm to feel good about his work, he must immediately reinstate the woman, Frida, in the tavern. I need you to convince Frida from you that you are living with her. If you can get some recognition for this, it will help you in the future, and left the Herrenhof Inn. When Kay, who had been asleep in the tavern for some time, awoke, Peppy, who had brought him his meal, said, it's already dark. You've been asleep for more than half a day, she says, adding, Frida, who is returning to this tavern tonight, was also here earlier to do some preliminary arrangements, and tells her own personal story. For Poppy, who until a few days earlier had been a maid with a guest room with poor working conditions, the move to the tavern was a blessing in disguise. With her hair done, and with the support of her fellow house wenches, she had a new outfit that made her look good. Just as she was excited to be promoted to a prestigious position as an employee of the bar, the return of Frida, the signature girl, suddenly put a damper on Peppy's bright future. When Peppy tearfully complained, after all, you and I were both used by Frida, Kay said, your excitement looks ridiculous because you don't know your own size. You have no way of knowing the real reason why I broke up with Frida, Kay countered. Peppy suggested that Kay, who had lost her job and a place to sleep, come live with him in his room with his fellow housemaids. This work is unfinished and ends here. According to what the author Kafka told his acquaintance, Kay was tired of being at odds with the castle, which never took him up on his offer, and became ill, eventually being allowed by the castle to work in the village under extenuating circumstances. However, he is not given the right to live in the village, and he finally dies. Kay half raised his head, ruffled his disheveled hair, and said, I seem to have wandered into the wrong place. You say this village is a castle? The young man replied slowly, of course, sir. It is the castle of the Earl of West. So you need permission to stay here? Kay asked, as if trying to confirm that what he had just been told might have been a dream.